know that if you're in a car accident, that definitely the faster you're driving, the faster your body is going to stop when that car crashes, and the more likely you're going to be seriously injured. However fast your car was going, that's how fast your body was going. And when you hit another car or a tree or the median or the guardrail, and your car stops suddenly, your body is still moving at the speed you were going.
So in patients that come into the trauma room after a vehicle collision, we'll see a range of any type of injury. The most significant ones we'll see are head injuries, bleeding in the brain, skull fractures. We'll see spine injuries, so potentially anywhere in the spinal cord, and those can lead to paralysis. We'll see injury anywhere within the chest and abdomen, which can be bleeding, broken ribs, ruptured organs, and then we'll see extremity injuries. We'll see broken limbs, dislocations, and in a lot of these type of collisions, we'll see a combination of all of those injuries.
I know that a significant number of the accidents we see, the driver coming in was impaired. Still a surprisingly high number, given how much public focus has been put on that. You would think that nobody would do that anymore, but I'm really surprised when the traumas come in, and we still see that there are a significant number of drivers that drive while impaired. So what I would say to young people in the teens or people in their 20s regarding cell phone use and driving, it's a significant risk for being in a car accident and again, being seriously injured. When you look down at your cell phone, even for 5 seconds, it's the same as if you just lost your vision for 5 seconds. Again, just be smart when you're driving, and it's not smart to be on or using your cell phone because you're completely distracted. Overall, the mortality has slowly been coming down, but I can tell you we still see many traumas at our trauma center here. Most of them are still motor vehicle collisions. That's still the most common by far cause of traumas. And despite how much safer cars are becoming, I think people should realize that no car is going to be equipped to be safe enough to prevent death 100% of the time or to prevent serious injury. Once you're in that bad car accident, we can make a difference in some of the injuries, but many of the injuries, if you're paralyzed immediately from a spinal injury, we generally can't reverse that. I always wish, when I see some of the traumas that come through, I always think it'd be the best education for people in general, especially young people, to just see what some of the trauma patients go through, the amount of pain they're in, the significant injuries, the spinal cord injuries, the head injuries, and it was just a few seconds on the road, and it's going to affect them for the rest of their life.
Whether you're driving while you're distracted or driving while you're impaired, your chances of being involved in a collision are much higher than the average driver. And ultimately, if you're involved in a collision, you can get yourself hurt, and people are getting killed. These are driving situations that ultimately are preventable by making wiser decisions before you get into the car and set the car in motion. If you're driving a vehicle, that needs to be the only thing you're doing. You need to focus on that. There are consequences if you go beyond that.
There's a number of people in collisions that will die at scene, and we don't see those patients at the trauma centers, but those are usually related to either significant head or spinal cord injury or due to kind of instant massive bleeding, which is usually related to the big blood vessels in the chest. In patients that we see in trauma that die, some of them will die within a few hours of arrival, and those are usually people with really significant hemorrhaging, which is often from multiple parts in the body, which is not something that we can surgically repair. Some people will die after having significant brain injuries, which affect their body's ability to function. Some people will die long-term in the hospital or after hospital stays just due to complications of these injuries.
One of 4 factors are involved in the vast majority of fatal motor vehicle collisions. These include impaired driving with drugs or alcohol, the use of seatbelts, speed, and distracted driving. And there are hundreds of cases that I've personally been involved in. I can't even recall a single case where one or more of those factors has not been involved. So as a forensic pathologist, what affects me the most as a medical doctor is seeing senseless death. These deaths are imminently preventable if drivers just simply paid attention, didn't drink, didn't do drugs, wore their seatbelt, and slowed down. There'd be a lot less senseless death on the roads. If I could say one thing to young drivers, it's that when you get behind the wheel, it should be your #1 priority to control that vehicle.
The predominant trauma population is the young population, whether that's due to sort of risk behaviors or social situations, it's hard to know, but it's definitely a problem in younger people. And I think some of that is not being aware of the consequences. You know, being in the trauma room, we see what it's like for the family of patients who are injured or killed. We see what it's like for the patients who come in and are now paralyzed or have very significant injuries to deal with. So we see that outcome. And I think young people, when they're driving and are distracted or under the influence, don't recognize the outcome that their actions can have, how much that can affect both their own personal health and safety and the people in their car, but the stranger on the street, the person walking across the road, the car in front of them, you know, and it's something that will change their life forever and is something that you really won't be able to live with yourself if you do. You look at a text, you have a few beers, and then you get in the road and you kill somebody, you're never gonna get over that.
There's a lot of common themes that emerge when you see victims of motor vehicle collision deaths. There's driving too quickly, there's driving distracted, there's driving impaired, and there's inattention to the road when they're driving. There's a very common preventable, fixable features of motor vehicle collisions that could prevent deaths. Almost every motor vehicle collision is preventable. We look for every death investigation we do at what are the root causes, what could have been prevented. And virtually all of them could be prevented through a combination of the things we talked about. Slowing down, buckling up, paying attention, driving sober. There's been a lot of focus on distracted driving, and especially in the last few years. And I think there's some really, really strong evidence of the negative effect of distracted driving and texting and emailing while driving and using cell phones. We know that the OPP have said there have been 83 deaths on Ontario roads in the last year from people that can directly be related to distracted driving. The effects of these distractions, just the momentary distraction it takes while driving a car, it may not seem like very much, but when you're going 30 meters every second at highway speed, it doesn't take very long before you're in a situation you can't get out of. One of the hardest parts of our job as coroners and as medical professionals is interacting with families after a tragic death has happened. So these are often young people who are, out for a night of fun, and a few hours later, after being home with their family are getting a knock on the door from the police with some absolutely unimaginable news. And the effect on families from these preventable motor vehicle collisions can't even really be described. So it's not just yourself you need to think about. You need to think about the people who care about you and who want you home safe.
My sister was killed in a car accident 26 years ago. It was May 24th weekend. We're not sure of what the cause of her accident was, but we do know that she suffered injuries that were catastrophic and related to the fact that she was not wearing a seatbelt at the time. She lived 5 days in a hospital, and we had to take her off life support. It's hard to believe when a doctor can actually tap you on the shoulder and tell you that your sister's brain dead. And then as a family to come together and make a decision to take them off life support. And then in the future, trying to come together and knowing that that person's never going to be in your life again. It never goes away. Never goes away. What I can say is sitting in a hospital room with somebody that has catastrophic head injuries and the injuries to their body, you'll never forget that. You can't erase it from your mind. It's there forever. It's imprinted, absolutely imprinted. It didn't need to happen. If she had actually put that seatbelt on, she'd be alive. She'd be alive today.
When a driver is arrested for impaired driving by drugs or alcohol, some of the penalties, some of the immediate things are going to be that you're going to have your vehicle impounded for a period of 7 days, and you're going to lose your driver's license for a period of 90 days. Once that goes through the court system and you get convicted, you're going to have a minimum of a $1,000 fine and anything ranging up to life imprisonment based on the severity of the reasons you're stopped, whether it's a roadside stop or you could have a collision and somebody dies. There are penalties, as we know, the legal penalties, but of course the real consequences are when people die, and it devastates people and their families, and everybody gets hurt.
Aside from the legal penalties, there are consequences if you're driving while impaired or if you're driving while distracted. And these consequences can range from minor injuries to life-altering injuries to even death, not only to yourself but to other people who share the roadway with you, pedestrians, other motorists. Driving is a privilege, and with that privilege there's a great deal of responsibility that we need to attach to our driving. We need to be cognizant of where we are, what we're doing. Our attention has to be focused on just what we do as drivers. And in the end, we have to remember that there's a couple of thousand pounds of metal that we are in control of, and that in itself deserves our full attention when we do operate a car.
Driving is a very serious responsibility, and you must treat it so. If you're driving a vehicle, that must be the only task you dedicate yourself to. If you are impaired by alcohol or impaired by drugs or distracted by such things as cell phones, there's very serious consequences to that type of action, and people can actually get hurt and killed. These are injuries and collisions that are preventable and predictable, and you need to take that responsibility seriously.
Driving's a privilege and it's a responsibility, and it's challenging. Even if you learn how to drive and you think it's easy and you think it's fun, it requires focus. There are distractions. People can run in front of your car, or cars can suddenly turn in front of you that you don't have control of. And if you're distracted by your cell phone ringing, by your friends laughing in the car, by having had a few drinks, you're going to get in an accident. And we don't want to see you here in the trauma room. You don't want to be part of this. You don't want to put somebody else in the trauma room. This is something that you'll have to deal with for the rest of your life, and it's not worth it.
You get behind the wheel of that vehicle, just pay attention. It should be your number one priority to keep control of that vehicle and avoid a fatal collision.
So the advice I'd give people is, go out, have a good time, but be safe, make good choices. Remember to plan ahead. So if you're going to be out and you're going to be partying and not in a condition to drive your vehicle home, then plan to have someone else drive who is sober. Plan to take a taxi. Plan to crash on someone's couch. Given the choice between staying over at someone's place and crashing on their couch overnight, or spending the night in one of these drawers back here, I know which one I'd pick.
What I would tell to young drivers that might be watching this right now, you've got your whole life ahead of you. Don't change that with one bad decision, or all it takes is a few bad seconds on the road. I think whenever you get behind the wheel, it's a responsibility for yourself, for anybody in your car, for anybody else on the road. And so you should be in the proper shape to drive, the right state of mind, and not under the influence of anything, not sleep deprived, because it really just takes a few seconds to change your whole life.